Over the years, I've gotten a lot of questions from a lot of guys about one very common problem. That is, these are guys who work in largely white-collar environments, and for the most part, when you're in a white-collar environment, the dress code is something that would traditionally fall under the refined archetype. But these are guys who, based on their own approach to life, based on their own aesthetic preferences, will lean more towards either the rugged or the rakish. And their question for me always is, how do I inject a little bit of this element of rugged or rakish into my work wardrobe? What they want to do is be able to comply with the dress code, look professional, dress in a way that accomplishes all those goals, but at the same time inject a little bit of personality. Now, before you go any further, if you don't know what I mean by the terms rugged, refined, and rakish, I've got a link up here for you. Go check that out, read through those articles, even take the quiz to find out where you fall within that, and then come back and you'll have a better idea of what I mean within these terms. So the way that I've figured this out over the last few years is there's 3 different areas to focus on when it comes to being able to inject these different archetypes into a work-appropriate wardrobe. And those 3 are color contrast, texture, and accessories. So I'm gonna break down each one of these to give you an idea of how that actually applies. So let's start with color and contrast. For the most part, in a business environment, most of the time guys are operating under some sort of a moderate contrast. If it's a work environment that requires you to wear a suit, typically you're gonna be in some sort of a light colored shirt, like a white, maybe a light blue, maybe something that has some pattern. You'll have a tie that's a little bit of a different color, and it's usually going to be a simple suit. So there's not a whole lot of contrast, but at the same time there definitely is some. Now if you want to go a little bit more rugged, because that's the way that you lean, one of the best things you can do is bring down the contrast. And what I mean by that is getting your tones to be closer together, getting those colors to be a little bit more monochromatic. So let's say you're wearing a navy suit. The traditional kind of business route with that is to take a navy suit with a white shirt and let's say a green necktie. That's great, right? But let's say that we want to do something that's a little bit more toned down and therefore a little bit more rugged. So let's take that same navy suit. You would have a dark tie, a dark shirt, and a dark pocket square. Maybe they're all different shades of blue. That's a way to play that color down and make that contrast work to your advantage as a way to make it look a little bit more rugged. Now, going to the other example, if we want to make it more rakish, then what you want to do is you want to up that contrast. So you want to take that same navy suit, maybe you stick with the white shirt, but then you're throwing in an orange tie or a yellow or a bright red or something else that because of the contrast, it draws more attention. Now obviously with both of these, you don't want to go so far to the extreme that it becomes a distraction and it hinders the appearance that you're trying to accomplish from a professional standpoint. But at the same time, you want to kind of get 1 or 2 standard deviations outside from the mean so that you can still have some personality within what that contrast is while still falling within the dress code. Okay, so the next aspect is texture, and texture is a big one because what this comes down to is a real subtlety that most guys won't be able to quantify, but they'll recognize it when they see it. And so let's talk about the different textures on different cloths. I'm going to show you that on 4 different cloths that I have here in front of me. So let's start over here at the left, and this is something that is your typical business suit cloth. It's a worsted wool, it's a simple weave, and there's not a whole lot of anything going on, which is great for that refined archetype. This is great for the vast majority of guys who are content to fall within that realm. But let's say you want to step it up just a little bit and you want to go to something that's a little bit more visually textured, even though tactily it's not going to feel much different. With that, I've got a bird's eye here. Now the way that this is woven, the way that the cloth is dyed, it gives a little bit of that visual texture, that melange that allows for the cloth to be a little bit more visually interesting. And then if you want to take it even further, what you can do is get into even more texture, and at this point you're looking at different weights. So I have a very open basket weave, which is a summer weight, and then a heavy flannel, which is more of a fall-winter weight. And with both of these, the texture is not only visual, but it's palpable, you can feel it. It's going to affect the way that the cloth lies and breathes, and it's also going to affect, obviously, the way that it looks on you. So the safest way to do this is to start with the worsted wool. That's the most refined, that's gonna be the best as far as compliance within a dress code. You wanna take it up a notch, you go to that bird's eye, because there's a little bit of that visual texture, but it's still gonna be totally appropriate, it's gonna be totally all season, it's gonna drape and lie and do all the things that you want it to do without distracting. If If you want to go even further, then that's where you get into the spring, summer, the fall, winter weights and go into those that even have more of that tactile texture. Okay, and then the third and the final option is when it comes down to things like accessories. And what I mean by accessories, especially when we're talking about a business wardrobe, is typically ties, squares, and shoes. So let me show you what I mean with this. Start with the rugged. With this, I've got some simple textures laid out in a great grenadine tie, and this really falls into that context that I was talking about when it comes to texture. You take something like a grenadine, especially something that's handmade and that's a little bit schlubby, and you can see this third dimension to it, that it's got wrinkles and it's folds and it's a little bit imperfect. Same thing if you go with a linen pocket square as opposed to a silk square. Yeah, you could focus on just a plain white because it's going to get the job done, but just that texture and even that little bit of wrinkle to it lends itself a little bit more to that well-worn, traditionally rugged archetype. And then obviously a big one is something like a pair of boots. Now traditionally boots are only worn in fall and winter, but if you have a good alpine boot like this, something that is hand painted, it's got a sleek last to it, even though it's got the lug sole, this is going to be entirely appropriate as a dress boot. You take something like this with the texture, with the monochrome contrast, and then you take suiting materials that are more textured, even shirting materials that are more textured, and all of a sudden you have an entire suit that leans very, very rugged. Think of like old world England and hunting jackets and that kind of stuff. So let's go to the other side. Let's go with Rakish. Now with this is where you can stay in realms of bright colors and contrast. Typically you're going to be looking at things like silks, but even linens here. Maybe you want a square that has a printed pattern to it, like this one from Rampling & Co. And for shoes, this is where you step out of the realm of just simple lace-ups and maybe go with something like a double monk, because it's still dress appropriate, it's still work appropriate, but it's a little bit more unique, it's a little bit more attention getting, and so it's going to be more in line with that rakish archetype. So what it really comes down to is being able to use these three variables either on their own or in conjunction with each other in a way that works for you. And the only way that you can really figure that out is by experimenting with it. Some guys, because of both their personalities and because of the allowances within their work environment, can go completely to one extreme or the other, but the majority of you are only going to have a little bit of leeway to work around with. So I suggest starting with one of those three and playing with this until you find something that not only looks great and still helps you in your professional life, but also helps you feel more comfortable and feel like you're better projecting yourself as a man with what you're wearing.